Guys, I thought I'd do a video on talking about the value of playing in a church band. For me, a contemporary church praise band. I played in one from about 2000 to about, I would say, about till the beginning of the pandemic. I was playing fairly consistently with the group. I'll name off some benefits and we'll go into detail about them. It was a group that was fairly consistent. At least there was always a stage to go to. For me, every other weekend and play songs on. So that was there. The configuration of the band would vary sometimes. Some people could play some weekends and some weekends they couldn't. I could only play 2 weekends a month because of my job as a nurse aide. So I was there, as when I could be. We would practice on Saturday for about 2 hours, and then we would practice for another hour on Sunday before we played, which, from what I understand, is fairly generous compared to some other praise bands who literally only practice for about an hour or maybe even a half hour before they play. There's some groups that are fly-by-night operations, and the musicians are talented enough to be able to pick up and play songs fairly quickly. It helps, especially if you have been listening to those songs. At least, I always thought it was good to make playlists. At first, I would burn CDs of collections of songs that I wanted people to listen to. And then when I would email everybody and say, check out track 15 on CD number 3 for the song that I'm wanting to bring to the band this weekend to cover, give it a listen during your week before you show up Saturday to practice. And people were about doing that. I tried to provide the resources and things. And then when YouTube became a thing and you could just put a playlist and then digitally copy and paste that playlist link onto an email, I did that. Versus having to make physical CDs anymore. But like I said, the group was consistent. My particular group, I felt like I was lucky because, like I said, we covered songs going back even into the 60s due to the ages of the people I was with. That's what they grew up with, and that's what we did. And there were songs that were appropriate for church. Like I mentioned, trying to think of the Beatles' "Help," "Come Together," "Come On People Now, Smile on Your Brother," "Everybody Get Together Right Now." We covered that. We did "Spirit in the Sky." I'm going to the place that's the best. We covered that song. It was great. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. We did some other 70s sounding songs. Song Way Down, Deep in My Heart, which I felt like the guitar riff I felt like I was playing felt very 70s to me. So yeah, like in the vein of like sort of America, like the group band America, or it could even arguably have like a disco-ish feel to it, the way the chords went. An example. I just always, sorry you can't see what I'm playing. It's this isn't a lesson. This is just me yapping. So. Yeah, almost like that chord feels like a James Bond chord to me, ish. Those songs were fun. I always played rhythm acoustic, for the most part. We did cover "Pride in the Name of Love" by U2, and I brought one time I brought an electric guitar, and I had not fully learned how to do all the effects and all the intricacies of playing that song to make it sound like The Edge. And I did the best I could. I don't know if YouTube was around at that point and I could have pulled up a lesson video. I had one delay pedal. I didn't know what all the settings and all the effects were supposed to be, and I'm still not an experienced enough electric guitar player at this point either. I still am very much in my rhythm acoustic ditch. that I want to pull out of. I had a Les Paul guitar, and then I sold it and I traded it for a Fender Stratocaster, and I don't know, that's my messy journey with guitars, electric guitars. But so I had that. And I, like I said, if I didn't say it already, I was there from about 2000 to the beginning of the pandemic. Um, and that kind of really shut down the band. And there was internal struggle, like every band. I mean, Christian or not, there's people in the band. It's human beings, and people have their their aspirations and their visions and their frustrations and their shortcomings, and all that stuff gets thrown into the mix of any kind of group, band or whatever, or two more are gathered, you know, Jesus and chaos will be walking with them hand in hand. Um, so that was, that's what it was. There were people who didn't get along with other people. People came and went. There was we had a drummer there for a long time who finally he and his family moved on to another church, and it was, and we found another drummer who we had for a while, who a new guy who came into the band brought. And we had a keyboardist who came in, and then after a while he moved on to other things, and yeah, that's just how it goes. Those kind of things go. I mean, people were free to come and go as they pleased, and it's just, as Paul McCartney told Johnny Marr, that's bands for you. All the stuff that goes on. But there were a lot of good moments too. We did get to play out live once on an outdoor stage where we got to cover a song called "Speaking in Tongues" by the Elms, which I still remember. I remember our music. I remember two things that happened. I got to play my 12-string and sing, and I felt good about my playing and singing for the most part. I'm not going to say I was perfect or things, but I think it went well enough. Our music got blown away by the wind. We were a chart-dependent band. We had charts in front of us all the time, every time we played. We never learned music to the point where we couldn't have charts in front of us. Nothing else, we needed our stands to hide behind when we were performing, I suppose. So I have good memories from that. Got to cover a lot of my favorite band, Jars of Clay. I brought probably approximately 10 songs in from Jars of Clay. I learned a lot of the Casting Crowns catalog that way. I learned about Mark Cohn that way. Like I said, my 60s and 70s music education, which I had a good chunk of learned already because my mom had, a lot of old records like the Beatles, Dan Fogelberg, who's this? Brain Salad Surgery, that Palmer, I'm trying to think of that. Amy Grant, mom listened to a lot of Amy Grant. Heart in Motion, some of the earlier hits, the El Shaddai song that was written by Michael Card. I heard a lot of Michael Card through my mom. The 90s came around, I got into Jars of Clay and DC Talk and Audio Adrenaline, and how many other bands can I name? How many bands do I have on the wall back there? Reality Check, Relient K, who else stands out in my mind that I'll just magically remember here? Yeah, I'll have to look at my wall. Sixpence None the Richer. Yeah. I bought songbooks and did the best I could to learn those songs with just the suggested chords, and my knowledge of what chords are. Limited knowledge of that. Like years later, I've actually pulled those books out and I've been trying to make copies of the pages, and I try to write down what the notes are next to the stuff in the piano score, so I can maybe even try to learn a little bit of stuff on the piano. I took a few piano lessons. I took a few vocal lessons. I was also in a praise band called The Calling. We were going to be a Christian rock band. That was back in 97, 6, 8, something there. We weren't, not the Calling that got famous. We were called ourselves a Calling, and then we realized the famous Calling was already out there, and you couldn't call ourselves a Calling. So that's how that went. That band didn't last too long. and I did learn the lesson of me going through a song set as a lead singer, singing 5 or 6 songs and not having a voice after that. So I needed vocal lessons because everything I was doing was wrong and I wasn't going to have a voice if I kept up the way I was. So if you're a singer, get to know your voice and take lessons seriously, and all the techniques that people say to learn to do to preserve and protect your voice, listen to them, because it's not worth destroying your voice. A lot of famous singers who don't have voices anymore who have tore them up because proper singing technique was never learned. Yeah, so said it was a long-term band. It was the longest band I played in, the longest, absolute longest. I stuck around. I always just did my part as the rhythm acoustic guy. There was a couple of times I filled in on drums. I do enough to keep a beat for the most part. Eventually got the last leg of the band. My buddy Tyler Muchmore, who is a much more professional drummer, been playing drums since a very young age and things like that, and multi-instrumentalist and stuff like that too. Very, very good musician. I finally got him to come in and play, and once when the need for a drummer came up once again. So yeah. We covered another random thing to mention. We covered the song "Celebrate Me Home." That one we really worked on the vocals on. We really worked on vocal harmony and what the parts were, and really tried to get it right. We covered a decent amount of Third Day songs. There were some modern Christmas songs that came out by the contemporary groups, which was good because I remember us struggling through old, like sheet music that was probably printed in maybe even far back as the 50s or earlier. Like the chord changes happened at every quarter note. It was just like every note change. You had to change chords, which is crazy. Which I feel like almost took a knowledge of classical guitar to do, which I didn't have. Still don't have. So that was interesting. But I learned a lot. I mean, I learned how to change keys. That was another big thing that I picked up in the praise band because the praise band forced me to learn it. You had singers who would come in and say, "Man, could you take that down about so many steps or half steps or whatever it was, or take it down to this key?" And then the electric guitarist I played with, he would do his key changes in whole steps. We never did half step, which still, now that I think about it, it's like, oh no. But anyway, I learned how to change things in terms of whole steps. So we would just, cross out whatever the chord was in the key that it was in, and we'd take it down to the new key we were going to play it in. We edit our charts that way on the spot there with pencils and paper. And then I would figure out that an A minor with a capo on the 3rd fret is a C minor. So A minor, C minor. So changing keys got easier and easier over time. I learned more and more about it and was able to do that more flawlessly and without struggle, as it just became something an exercise that I repeated over and over as the need came up. So that's a big chunk of why I can do what I can do now with my tutorials channel and do as much as I can do now with my tutorials channel. And I still feel very limited, and I still feel like I need to go back and learn theory and probably get some, just grind, like I say, make copies of my songbook pages and write the notes letter name next to each note on the staff, and go through the, kindergarten process of learning how to write, do the alphabet, and all over again, so to speak, in terms of the way you read music. It's like learning how to read all over again, with letters and then words and then sentences and then paragraphs and then pages. So that kind of thing, to give it a progression. But it was good. I mean, being in church has always put me around music and put me around, classical and Baroque music like Johann Sebastian Bach, that's what he did. He wrote church music. He literally composed music for the church his whole life, pretty much. I think there might have been some off period. I'm not sure the Brandenburg concertos weren't an off period where he was just writing stuff for the sake of writing. Um, but and we had a great organist who she played the organ. She was an opera level singer. She took professional vocal lessons. She gave me the very few vocal lessons I took and didn't do enough with when I took them. She also is a professional piano player, of course, and things like that. And then, I don't know if she went to Juilliard or what, but she was like that level of musician. And we were very fortunate to have her as long as we had her. We had a bell choir, we had a regular church choir, and they would do great pieces of music that were really good, and they would sound really amazing. And it's a shame that those days are over. That she retired or is working somewhere else nowadays. And what happened to most of the choirs, and either they're gotten old. A lot of them are older folks, and things like that. So I don't know. There's a few of them that are still around. Last I went to church, I stopped having going to church in over a year because of the pandemic. But yeah, if you're a person of faith, especially, or if you even want to just look into being a person of faith, I'd recommend finding a praise band. Look at a few different praise bands. My praise band, I felt like I was lucky because we would play songs from even going far back as the 60s. We weren't just stuck in the current wave that's happening now as much. So that was great. We even had a guy who would write his own songs and he would play them. I mean, we had that going on. So that we had that much flexibility in the group that we were in is fantastic. And I don't know how many other groups do that. So I would give it consideration if you're a musician person and a person of faith, and look into joining your praise band and finding a job there to do, and learning. You'll have other people around you playing music. You're learning from other musicians, and same way you can do if you play with friends or other people you get to know and stuff like that. It's another avenue for learning. So I would say give it a try. Take the chance and give it a try. I think you'll have experiences that you can't put a price tag on. The things I learned, like I said, I learned a lot that I wouldn't have learned if I'd been on my own. I would all of the changing of keys, never would have got around to it. Since necessity forced me to playing in the group. All right, thanks a lot for listening.